She laughed. Your job embarrasses me, I replied. All right, Reddit stories. I 32 male was mopping the shop floor at 7:10 a.m. on a Wednesday when my phone buzzed and slid across the metal counter toward the bucket. I caught it with a wet hand and saw a text from my girlfriend Madison Clark, 29, female. She wrote, "We need to talk tonight. Because your job is embarrassing me." The yellow shop light hummed and the air smelled like rubber and cold coffee, and for a second I just stood there with the mop dripping on my boots. I fix cars at Rosemont Tire and Auto on Maple and 5th, and I am proud of it. I change tires, replace brakes, and trace electrical gremlins that eat batteries for lunch. I make steady money and send $200 a month to my mom because she raised 3 of us alone. Madison works in marketing for a fashion startup downtown, and her world is rooftop bars, investor mixers, and artisan lattes with art. On the phone, we met last summer at a neighborhood block party when her dog Daisy stole my burger bun. She laughed easy, and I liked how she looked at people when they talked. Things were great until winter when she started dropping little comments like, "Maybe someday you will do something bigger, and please do not wear your work shirt to dinner." I brushed it off because she still left notes by my coffee maker that said, "You got this at 3:14 p.m. I stepped outside the bay to call her. She answered and said, "Can you meet me at my place at 6?" I said yes and tried not to think about the word embarrassing. All afternoon her building lobby smelled like lemons and the elevator music tried to smooth out my nerves. She opened the door in a black dress and said, "Alex, we need to talk." We sat on the couch while Daisy snored on the rug. She said, "My cousin is coming to dinner Friday and I need you to say you are in management school because saying you are a mechanic is getting old." I said, "I am a mechanic and I like it." She laughed and said, "Your job embarrasses me and it does not match my network." I replied, "All right," and leaned back so I would not say something I could not take back. She kept going and said, "My friends are building brands and raising rounds, and you smell like tires." I stared at a stack of glossy magazines with her campaigns inside. I said, "Tell me exactly what you want." She said, "Dress better, detox your Instagram, delete the shop pictures, and tell people you are exploring new opportunities." One said, "That sounds like lying." She said, "It is." Leveling up, something cold settled in my chest and I said, "I am heading out and I will text you." She said, "Fine, and please get a decent jacket for Friday." In my truck I listened to the engine tick as it cooled and tried to slow my breathing. At 6:38 p.m. my buddy Tyler called and asked what happened. I told him and he said, "If someone tells you how they see you, believe them and then plan your next move." That night I opened my receipts folder on my laptop because I keep records when money is involved. In December I paid $1,240 to tow and repair her Audi. When her card got flagged in January, I covered 4 days of her rent while her paycheck bounced in March. I mixed sound for a 6-minute brand video at 2 a.m. because her editor bailed. I never asked for anything, because that is what partners do, but I kept the texts, the Venmo notes, and the email chain. Thursday morning she sent a selfie from a glass-walled conference room and wrote, "Big pitch today, wish me luck." I wrote, "You will crush it," and went back to aligning a Camry. Around noon my manager Ruth asked why I looked tired. I gave her a short version. She said, "You do clean work, treat people right, and never upsell nonsense, and that is worth more than any rooftop bar." She added, "When you want to move into service writing, I will recommend you." That evening Madison texted, "Change of plan, tomorrow is a brand dinner at Belgrave with my boss and clients, and I want you there." I asked dress code and she wrote, "Upscale, smart, and do not wear boots." Friday I finished a brake job at 4:11 p.m., showered at the shop and put on my navy suit. I polished my old boots, then changed into plain sneakers and drove to the restaurant. Belgrave had high ceilings, candles, and a wall of bottles like a museum. Madison kissed my cheek and whispered, "Please talk less about cars." I said, "All right." We sat with her boss Lauren, a coworker named Aaron, and 2 clients named Grace and Colin. When Aaron asked what I do, I said, "I am a technician at Rosemont Tire and Auto." Madison squeezed my knee under the table. Grace said, "The new tech must be wild to keep up with." I said, "It is, and it is satisfying when a family drives out safe after the van used to shake at 60 miles an hour. Lauren said, "My brother got scammed by a mechanic once, so I avoid small shops." Madison laughed too loudly and said, "That is what I tell Alex about perception." I said, "Perception and reality are different. At our shop we bring customers to the car show the worn rotors and measure tread together." Colin nodded and said, "That matters." Madison cut in and said, "Anyway, our brand just closed a $3 million round," and people clapped softly. Dessert came and Madison leaned in and whispered, "See, it is not that hard to talk like us." I nodded and let it pass. When the bill arrived, the company covered most and the staff tipped. I put down $120 because the server worked hard and I respect hard work. On the sidewalk Madison said, "That looked try hard." I said, "It looked like respect." She asked to talk tomorrow, Saturday at 10:06 a.m. I sat at my table with cheap coffee and Wrote what I want in a partner and what I bring: honesty, respect, no contempt, teamwork. At noon, Madison came over with Daisy. She said, I am sorry for my tone and I want us to fit. I said, I am the same person you met at the block party. She said, your job limits our future because image matters. I said, if your friends and investors judge me, then they do not respect you either. She said, there is an alumni gala in 2 weeks and I cannot have you. Tell people you fix brakes. I said, I will not lie and I will not be treated like a costume. She said, you are being stubborn. I said, I am being myself. She said, maybe we should take a break. I said, all right. She looked shocked because she wanted a fight. She left and the apartment felt hollow but clean. Tyler came by with protein shakes and said, you did the right thing. He also said a friend at her company heard gossip that she is building a personal brand on a fake narrative about rising alone and editing out the people who helped. I said, I have receipts, but I do not want to use them. He said, keep them anyway. Sunday, I changed the oil on a customer's minivan for free because they just brought home a baby and Ruth approved it. That felt like air after a storm. At 8:33 p.m. Madison texted, can we talk tomorrow? We met at a small park off Franklin after work. She said, my therapist says my tone was unfair. I said, thank you for saying that. She said, but I still want you to consider a path out of the shop. I said, I am open to growth, but not at the cost of integrity. She said, then maybe we should end it. I said, if that is what you want, then yes. She did not expect calm and asked, do you not even care? I said, I care enough to let you go if I am not enough as I am. We hugged while Daisy nosed the grass and she left. During the week, I worked gym laundry dinners with my sister Jenna and her husband Mike and sleep that finally stayed. Thursday, Ruth handed me customer surveys full of words like honest, helpful, and patient, and said the district manager is visiting next month and I want you to shadow me on schedules and parts orders. I said, thank you. Friday at 7:58 p.m. Tyler texted, check Madison Instagram now. She posted a reel on a white sofa about rising without help and cutting out anchor people, and in the caption she wrote, sometimes you must leave behind men who limit your shine. Comments were fire emojis and get it queen. I put my phone down and breathed, then opened my receipts folder. I wrote a calm message, please remove the false statement implying I limited you. I attached screenshots of the Audi repair, the rent spot, the late night edit, and a photo of a thank you card she wrote in January that said, you are my rock. I added, I am not asking for credit, only that you do not erase reality. She typed for minutes, then wrote, I did not mean you specifically, but I will edit. She changed the caption to vague words and I let it go. I thought that would be the end, but it was only the start because the dinner at Belgrave had a camera in the corner and a server with an opinion and a coworker with a big mouth, and because when someone keeps pulling on the thread to tidy their image, the whole sweater comes loose. Part 2. I woke up Monday to 3 missed calls from a number I did not recognize and a voicemail from Grace, the client from dinner. She said, Alex, this is Grace from the Belgrave table. Please call me back. I called on my break at 9:40. I'm standing behind the shop next to the old tire pile. Grace said, I hope this is not weird, but I wanted to thank you for what you said about showing customers their parts and about respect. She said, also, I need to tell you something because it involves your name. She said, someone on the team sent around a private chat after the dinner making fun of you and using your tip as a joke. She said it got forwarded to me by accident and your full name is in it. I felt heat rise in my ears and asked, can you send it? She said yes and warned that it is ugly. The screenshots came through and I leaned on the cinder block wall while reading. Aaron wrote, group thread title vibe check Belgrave after party. Madison wrote, my boyfriend tried to perform with a giant tip and sneakers and I died inside. Lauren wrote, investors hate that small town energy. Aaron wrote, I told him to say service advisor and he still said mechanic. Madison wrote, we are taking a break. So whatever Grace had replied later with this is mean and unprofessional and had gotten ignored. Ruth walked out back and saw my face. I showed her the screenshots. She said, take 10 minutes, breathe, and then decide what you want to do. I texted Grace, thank you for the heads up, and asked if she would be willing to confirm the screenshots if needed. She said yes. At lunch, I called my sister Jenna, who teaches 3rd grade and has a spine of steel. She said, what do you want? I said, I want to be left alone and I want the truth recorded. She said, then document and set a boundary. She said, you do not need to flip the table to make the floor shake. After work, I scanned all my receipts and the screenshots into a single PDF and saved it to a folder called Timeline. I wrote dates and times beside each item. At 7:12 p.m. I sent Madison a clear message. I wrote, I have seen the group thread that used my name and that mocked my work. I wrote, I do not accept being used as a prop. I wrote, please send a written apology and a retraction of any Statements implying I limited you or embarrassed you, and please ask your coworkers to delete my name from their private chat. She replied with a long paragraph about stress and context and how she never asked for the thread to be created. No apology. I said I will handle it. Then next morning I visited a small office on the second floor above a print shop where a family friend works as an attorney. His name is Jordan Price and he has a dry voice and calm eyes. I told him I did not want to sue anyone. I just wanted the harassment to stop and my name off their jokes. He said, you have receipts and you have a reasonable request. He drafted a brief letter on firm letterhead. It said our client requests a written apology, a retraction of any false statements, and removal of his name from internal off-channel communications, and reserves all rights. He sent it to the company legal email to Lauren, to Aaron, and to Madison by 2:25 p.m. I got a message from Lauren that said, please call me. I waited until my shift ended and called from my truck. Lauren said the letter was surprising and that she did not know about the thread and that she would handle it internally. I told her the screenshots showed otherwise. She went quiet and said, regardless, you will receive a written apology and a retraction today by 5:18 p.m. I had 3 emails, one from Aaron that said I am sorry for the disrespect, I have deleted your name and I was wrong, one from Lauren that said the company does not condone unprofessional behavior and we have addressed it and will implement training, one from Madison that said I apologize for letting others mock you and for participating in comments that dismissed your work. It was not perfect, but it was something. I printed the emails and filed them with the timeline I thought that would close the book. Again 2 days later, Tyler texted at 8:04 a.m. bro, check the restaurant story page. Belgrave posted a clip from security with faces blurred called Kindness in Action. It showed the end of our dinner when I put down the tip and patted the server on the shoulder. The caption said some guests understand hospitality and respect. The comments were warm and the server had replied with a heart. I went to work with a lighter step. Around noon, a man in a button-down walked in with a clipboard. He introduced himself as Dennis, the district manager. He watched me finish a diagnosis and then asked if I had ever considered training or service writing. Ruth smiled behind him. By 3:50 p.m. Dennis said, we are opening a new location in 2 months and we will need a lead tech who can mentor younger guys and talk with customers, and we pay $31 an hour plus a quarterly bonus plan. I said I would like to be considered. He said talk with Ruth and send me a resume. That night I updated my resume and sent it with Ruth's recommendation attached. At 9:27 p.m. Madison called. I let it go to voicemail. Her message said, I saw the restaurant post and I am happy for you and I am sorry again and I would love to talk. I slept on it and called her at 10:02 a.m. the next day. During my break she said, I have been doing work on myself and I want to try again. I said, I accept your apology but I am not coming back. She said, can we meet for coffee? I said, no thank you. She said, are you serious? I said, yes, and I wish you well. She said, what changed? I said, I stopped needing people who only see me as a mirror. Weeks moved. Grace stopped by the shop for an alignment and brought a box of donuts for the team. She said, I left that brand and joined a company that pays on time and treats people like people. She said, if you ever want a side gig, we need honest content about how to care for cars. I said, that sounds fun. I filmed 3 short videos with Grace on a Saturday showing how to measure tread with a penny, how to check oil, and why cheap brake pads are expensive. Later she paid me $600 and tagged the shop. Customers started mentioning the clips. Dennis called and said, the lead tech role is yours if you want it, and I said yes. The raise landed and I took my mom to dinner at a quiet place where the waitress called her ma'am, and my mom cried a little and told the waitress my son fixes cars and he is the best at it. The waitress smiled and said, I can tell by how he listens. One evening, Tyler and I walked past Belgrave and the same server recognized me and waved. She said, thanks again for how you handled that night. She said, your calm made the room feel safe. I thought about Madison and her reel and the deleted jokes and the emails in my folder. I thought about the line between dignity and pride and how silence can be a loud answer when it comes with receipts and a clear ask. Months later, I got a card in the mail with no return name. Inside was a short note that said, I have been learning to respect work I once dismissed and I am sorry for who I was when we met. It was signed by Madison. I put it in the timeline folder between the apology emails and the new offer letter. I fixed a truck the next morning and showed a dad and his kid how the brake rotors were worn and how to see the lip with a finger. The kid said cool and the dad said, thanks for not making me feel dumb. I said, my job is to keep people safe and tell the truth. Thanks for following this wild ride and for the advice to document and stay calm. Edit to answer a common question. Yes, I kept the boots and I still wear them on rainy days, and yes, the sneakers are clean now, and no, I am not going to the alumni gala. Edit update. Grace says the 3 car care videos crossed 100,000 views and the shop has a line on Saturdays, so if you stop by please say hi and we will measure tread together, and if anyone tells you your job embarrasses them you can always reply, All right, and then go build a life that does not need their approval.